Hi, so this is video 4. We're going to focus on assessments in this OpenSciEd unit and resources to help implement it into your classroom this school year. In video 1, we looked at the anchoring phenomena routine for the light and matter unit and explored the one-way mirror effect. We had a box model to kind of see that at a smaller scale. Students came up with questions and tried to come up with some kind of sort of consensus about their ideas, and that prompted questions and ideas for investigation. In video 2, we looked at kind of the big picture, the unit storyline, and focused on kind of the navigation routine. How do you get students to see the connections between lessons? And I talked about the progress tracker and how I use it in my class to get students to kind of reflect and see the connection between lessons and the big picture. In lesson 3, or in video 3, the kind of focus was on the OpenSciEd norms and how to encourage student discourse in your classroom to get those discussions really going, since that's like such a focus in this curriculum. You'll find you're doing a lot more facilitation, getting away from that, sage on the stage sort of style of teaching. That's been what the traditional science classroom has looked like for so long. So now we're gonna, in this video, we're gonna focus on the assessments and how to implement this unit and look at some different resources around that. So I think a good place to start is to go back to look at the unit storyline again. And I'll show later in this video where there's assessment opportunities for assessment within each lesson. But I want to kind of point out that the big assessments are in the lessons where you see the putting pieces together routine highlighted. So in this unit, about halfway through in lesson 5, there's an assessment. And then in lesson 7, there's kind of a major assessment where you kind of finally answer what's going on in the music student video and the one-way mirror phenomena. And then in lesson 8, the focus is applying what you know about this phenomena to a related phenomena. And this is kind of referred to as a transfer task assessment. So that's kind of where you see the major assessments. These are the assessments that I would like put a summative grade on. But you'll see as we look at the teacher's guide that there's opportunities for assessment within each lesson. I think kind of one mistake I made early on when I was teaching these OpenSciEd pilot units is that I didn't assess student work or put in grades because I was worried that I was going to kind of shut down discussion and they would be less likely to share their ideas. But then I kind of found myself not giving them enough feedback. So I think there's kind of a careful balance where I think in these points where lesson 5, lesson 7, lesson 8, with these major assessments that they need some feedback from their teacher or their classmates so that they're all kind of on the same page and putting the pieces together before we move on to a different aspect of the phenomena or applying the phenomena to a new context. So let's look at a lesson outside of 5, 7, and 8 for opportunities for assessment. So let's go back into the teacher's guide. So let's go back to the landing page. Okay. And just another refresher about how to access all the unit materials. And so let's pick lesson 3. Okay, so it's not one of those putting the pieces together. It's an investigation lesson. So so there's some kind of handouts and templates and stuff, but you know, the lesson slides are a good place to look, like, to kind of get an initial feel of the lesson. But if I want to go like in depth, I click on the teacher's guide, teacher's edition for lesson 3. All right, so we kind of went through this before, kind of how it's formatted in a previous video. So in the previous lesson, students were moving the light from room A to room B, making them both light, both dark. And then in this lesson, they're looking at shining the light in a light room versus a dark room, and then looking at how does the light interact with a one-way mirror, a pane of glass, and a regular mirror. Okay, so we're doing an investigation, kind of looking at different materials and how light's transmitted and reflected. And then there's kind of a summary of what we're going to be kind of looking at, how these materials are made and how they act on, like a kind of a micro scale. So let's look for opportunities for assessment. So here's the materials. You know, when you're thinking about what to assess, it's helpful to read this: where are we going and where are we not going? You know, you don't need to focus on these other ideas of where we're not going. You know, they might bring these ideas to the classroom, but they're covered maybe in later units. So we're looking for kind of opportunities for assessment. So these listen for, you know, you want to make sure the students are kind of, these things are coming up in the discussion. Here's some example follow-up questions, but this focus of this video is mainly not about supporting the discussion, is about assessment opportunities. So so here in the teacher's guide is an assessment opportunity. So here's kind of the standard. Again, it's color coded for the 3 dimensions. Use evidence to modify a model to explain how an object's material influences the path of light as it transmits or reflects off the material. Okay, so that's the standard alignment. And here's kind of what you're expecting students to say and to demonstrate. Okay, so so you can use this to, you know, build a rubric to enter something into the grade book to see if they have you know, some quantitative data that they've represented their drawing with the conventions that you've kind of established as a class. You know, a dotted line or a solid line. How do you show something that's been reflected or transmitted? How do you quantify the amount of light, more or less? So these are opportunity for assessment there. Okay, here's another opportunity for assessment, like more focused on like looking at, you know, the variables. Are the students conducting a fair experiment? So you can kind of assess them on their understanding of testable questions and stuff like that. Okay, is there anything else? Okay, here's another assessment opportunity. You know, you can have the students kind of write kind of a conclusion to their experiment. All right, so yeah, and then now they're updating their progress tracker. So that's another opportunity for assessment. I think it'd be good formative assessment. I talked more in like video 2 about how I use the progress tracker. But this is another opportunity for students to kind of reflect and, can they answer the lesson question? What happens when light shines on the one-way mirror? And bring in evidence from what they experienced in class. Okay, so that's a quick kind of review of like one lesson, all the different opportunities for assessment. I think there was 3 or 4. Some around modeling, some around writing a conclusion, designing a fair test, writing a testable question. So a lot of opportunities for assessment within that lesson. But I would say that the major assessments in this unit are seen on like lesson 5, lesson 7, lesson 8. But every lesson has an opportunity for assessment. And I think it's kind of your call on what you make formative or what you make summative and put a grade on. I would recommend though, like the progress tracker, you don't kind of grade because it's measuring their progress, and some students might be farther along than others. But I think at these key points, the midpoint assessment in lesson 5, the lesson 7, where they're explaining the original phenomena, and lesson 8, where they're doing a transfer task, that's an opportunity to put something in the grade book. Okay, so let's look at the midpoint assessment that comes in lesson 5. All right, so the students are given a template to draw a model to explain why the student sees themselves and why the adults are able to see the music student. Okay. And then there's a key here to give some students some more guidance about how to represent their ideas in the same way. So that's kind of the midpoint assessment. You're not explaining all parts of the phenomena, but they're not talking about what the eye and the brain does and stuff. That comes later. But they know a little bit about the material at this point. They've know that the impact that having the room being light versus dark has. So that's the midpoint assessment. Here is the one of the cumulative assessments kind of at the end of the unit, second to last lesson, where they kind of give their full explanation of the phenomena. So part 1 is, why did the adults see the music student? Why does the music student see himself but not the adults? So the students kind of give their explanation there. And then here's the rubric. One thing I'll say about grading in OpenSciEd is that they don't really provide a point system of how to grade. That's so different from district to district, and this is trying to be a national open source curriculum, so they don't get into the weeds. So it's kind of depends on your context, but they do provide some rubrics, and you can assign points as you need to. But here's kind of what they need to say, what evidence they need to bring in. I usually allow my students to use their progress tracker on their final assessment and their notebook. It's not about like how much information they can memorize, but it's how well do they explain the phenomena. So I want them to have that evidence that they've gathered over the last 18 days at their fingertips. So that's kind of the evidence that they're supposed to bring in from different lessons for a kind of a gapless explanation. And then there's opportunity for students to get feedback from peers. That's kind of incorporated into lesson 7. So hopefully you've kind of developed, a safe classroom where students know how to give constructive feedback to each other. So following those norms is really important because there's opportunities for students to, self-assess and assess others. So you want to make sure your classroom has a safe and equitable environment. for that to happen. And then here's kind of the last assessment. I'll show kind of the answer key. So there's kind of the breakdown on the standards and stuff. And so in this final assessment, students are having to apply what they know about the initial phenomena of the music student to a new context where there's a photographer, a glass window, and you're looking at kind of different perspectives. It's a sunny day out, and it's dark inside. And so this is a kind of example of what the model should look like. So these transfer tasks are really pretty challenging. There's a lot of depth of knowledge, I would say, in being able to understand the initial phenomena, but then apply it to one of these related phenomena. That I think shows a really deep understanding when students are able to transfer their knowledge from this specific phenomena to and generalize it to other related phenomena. So it's good to kind of, as you are, before you start teaching this unit, to kind of look and see like what the end destination is. And your students their initial models won't look like what they are going to produce at the end of the unit. But hold on to those artifacts because it really kind of shows the power of your instruction and the power of your facilitation to see what the students have learned over time and to see what they've been putting on their progress tracker and see how the complexity of their model improves with each investigation, each question. Those routines, like, have faith in them. They will get your students to the point where they're able to answer these really high level assessments. So we've looked at the teacher's guide for opportunities for assessment. We've looked at kind of the 3 main assessments in this unit. Now let's kind of like talk about what are some resources to help you implement this unit. There are a bunch of OpenSciEd teachers out there that you can connect with. For each unit, there's a Facebook group. So here's the OpenSciEd Light and Matter Facebook group. It's got almost 240 people, and it's great. If you're troubleshooting with a lab, or you get stuck, or there's a pandemic and you're trying to adapt these materials to a remote or hybrid or in-person situation. This is a great group of educators to connect with. A lot of the pilot teachers like myself are in these groups, and so they're maybe be teaching this unit for a second or third time, and they have a lot of wisdom that you can benefit from, and you can share your experience and your expertise. It's great also, to see student work on there as well. Another way to kind of network with other OpenSciEd teachers is through Twitter. If you follow like at OpenSciEd, they're often retweeting other teachers who are teaching these units, and you can get some great ideas to help support you in implementing these units. A lot of the resources that I gathered to help with this presentation, I took from these different materials that are publicly available. So if you go to access the professional learning materials, you can see all the different PowerPoint slides and videos that they use to teach pilot teachers and to teach people to implement these units So a lot of these trainings are like, 4 days in depth, and they're really valuable. I've experienced 6 of them. So I've tried to kind of condense these 4 days into 4 30-minute videos to give you kind of a crash course. But if I've left some things unanswered or given you more questions than answers at this point, you can dig back into these PD materials and learn more about the routines, learn more about individual lessons. And there's kind of prompts to help you kind of work through it. I would also add that like your educational service district in Washington State is probably supporting the OpenSciEd materials and curriculum in one way or another. So connect with them, your local ESD, and they can connect you with teachers who might have piloted or are teaching OpenSciEd units. So those are a few places to look for help. So if you made it to the end of these 4 videos, I would love it for you to take this evaluation survey so I can get some feedback on how these courses worked, and if there's other things you want me to focus on. Yeah, if you could leave your name and email, if you're wanting to learn more, I can send out you more information as I make more of these videos for the different units that for the middle school OpenSciEd curriculum. All right, well, that's about it for this video. So again, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you choose to implement an OpenSciEd unit in your classroom. I felt like it's been the best curriculum I've ever used in 11 years of teaching middle school science. I feel like the teacher's guides are so in depth. It kind of has freed me up to like spend more time to like get to know my students, because I'm not like scrambling to come up with a lesson that week, that it's all like there and it's high quality and it's been approved by the Achieve group and as being high quality, phenomena based, NGSS aligned curriculum. So I think it's awesome. So I hope you find success with it as well. All right, thanks.